Welcome to the Purpose Focused Advisor, a podcast for financial planners, advisors, and RIAs looking to get the most out of yourself and your business. Join Rob Brown and Phil Calandra as they walk you through a journey that will allow you to take action in your business and your life so you can be the best that you can possibly be. Now here are your hosts, Rob and Phil.
Welcome back. Time once again for my favorite half hour of the week, the Purpose Focused Advisor podcast. And today I am really excited to have with me Knight Colman, who is a Generation 2 partner. We're going to get into that in a minute. Generation 2 partner at Knight Colman Advisory Group, a great firm that does life planning the way it was designed to be done, and has been doing it for a long time. And we're going to dig into that too. So welcome to the podcast, Knight.
Oh, so happy to be here. Also, Colman Knight Advisory Group.
Colman.
Knight Colman with Colman Knight.
Well,
it's always
yes,
super memorable.
Yes, yeah, lots of K's. So I appreciate your correcting that. So let's dive in. So I introduce you as a Generation 2 partner, and I'd love for you to take a couple of minutes and kind of describe why you're a Generation 2 partner. What got you into the business, which ties directly into that?
Yeah, well, the one thing that I would say a little bit unique is that I am a Generation 2 partner, but my parents, Gail and Rich, actually started the firm that I am a Generation 2 partner at. But my story of how I got into the financial industry actually starts from Kenyon College, which is a small liberal arts school in Ohio. And I actually, between junior and senior year, interned at JP Morgan in Columbus. Then when I graduated, I was there in their development program for a couple years, rotational program, absolutely loved it. But it was about a year in, and I was talking with Gail, mom and founder of Colman Knight, and we're discussing. I'm like, I love this work, and I noticed that there's always going to be people there who can help billionaires, billion-dollar companies, and they totally deserve help. And I love that they are getting it, but where are all the humans? Where are all the people-to-people interactions? And she's like, Knight, I'm not sure if you've thought about this or know this at all, but that's literally what we do. And so about a year in to my program, I started talking very seriously with Gail and Rich about joining Colman Knight, what that would look like. And so that's kind of my journey there and how I started on that path. The other thing, we can get into this a little bit more, but what's really unique, obviously, there's incredible trust from the get-go, but I actually started day one at Colman Knight as a 5% owner, and we can talk about how we, structured some of that, but I will say that I think that's one of the single-handed one of the most impactful reasons of my development over the 5 years, what I can speak to, my knowledge of the business, the inner workings, the outer workings, and I think it really set the tone by being day one, joining as a partner and having that level of intensity, I guess.
Well, you're absolutely right. We do need to dig into that, but let's start digging into that by talking about the fact that as I talked with a lot of senior advisors of the generation of your parent partners, one of their dreams is, gosh, it would be great if my son or my daughter could join me in this business. And sometimes they try to force it, and then there's pushback. Other times it just happens accidentally, and then friction develops because there isn't intentionality. talk about intentionality in choosing that partner, and it doesn't necessarily have to be totally because of family, but I think thinking about choosing that next generation partner, being intentional about it, is an important message for the G1 generation to be hearing from somebody in the G2 that is doing it successfully.
Yeah, wow. I love that. There are two things that I would say about that. First, it is a gift, a true gift to even open the door and open that conversation. The reality is, had my mom not even mentioned it to me that there was a place for me at Colman Knight, I would not be here right now. And so, and as the, I would say, son in that role, I don't know if I would feel comfortable saying, I want this, or let me in. So I actually think it was really generous the way that my mom said, heard what I was saying, saw me, what I was passionate about, and said, Knight, there can be a place for you at our firm. And so I think that's really helpful for the generation one to know it's not a burden, it is not a force. Now, you can put undue pressure on it, and then it can get much more negative. But just the fact of opening that door that's not a door I would have opened by myself. And I'm so grateful that the idea was even brought to me. And I do think that is probably one of the roles of, what I think, what does Generation One have to bring to the table? Their hard work is building the trust, seeing whoever that Generation Two partner could be, seeing the potential in them, and broaching the conversation and bringing it up with them. I think that is one of the responsibilities of a Generation One partner. And I can go into the responsibilities of what I think the Generation Two partner needs to bring. But along with that, the other part, the second thing that I want to mention about that is something for Generation One partners to be on the lookout for. There is a different skill set necessary for starting a firm from nothing and taking a firm that already has really established beautiful pieces, and I would say almost enhancing it or breathing new life energy into it in a different way. And so those would be the two things that I think my mom and dad did really extremely well in that. First, opening the door, and two, seeing, well, wait a minute, Knight has some different skill sets than we have that I think would be really helpful for where the business is right now.
Yeah, and those are two great points. I really appreciate you sharing them, because I have had several conversations recently with next gen advisors who attribute the beginning of their success to the fact that they approached a firm. It wasn't a firm that was owned by their parents, and that advisor was willing to have a conversation with them. And so, to you old folks out there, I say that because I am one. If creating succession in your firm, continuity in your firm is important to you, open the door and have conversations. Don't think of it as like having a job interview where you're trying to hire somebody to staff, the front desk for, 3 hours a day. This is a whole different conversation. So open that door. And secondly, don't think that the person who is coming in as that G2 has to do things exactly the same way that you did them, because your next level of success is never going to happen exactly the same way as your last level or your first level. So you have to be attuned to that. So I think those are great point, Knight, and I appreciate your sharing them. And I only repeated them because I didn't want anybody saying, well, that's just Knight, he's the son, of course he'd say those things. No, these are real important things for those in our audience who are serious about succession and continuity planning and building lasting businesses. So now let's flip the table. Let's flip that to the G2. And so, what advice would you give to that G2 advisor? And maybe relate that to the fact that from day one, you had equity in this practice, which won't happen for everybody because maybe it's partly a family thing, but it's also a strategic thing that might be harder for some business owners to get their arms around. But what does that G2 person really look for? How do they make sure that they walk into that open door and take that opportunity and make it something that is vital to the success of both generations?
Yeah. Well, I will another two points on that. I will say the first point that also I think it was really helpful for me is I purchased my shares. Now we did seller financing. There's some benefits to that, but aligning your interest. And so even though family part of it, the success of the business drives ownership, drives the ability to pay off the note that I have from Gail and Rich as Generation One, which I actually think that was really helpful. If nothing was given, it feels earned. Now, obviously, there's the opportunity was given, but I think that's something to consider, a balance as well of how you're structuring that. But really, for Generation Two, what I think is so important, you have the most incredible opportunity to join a firm that is successful. What are the cornerstones, the non-negotiable pieces that have made that firm wildly, wildly successful? And I can say for our firm, 35 years ago, 36 years ago now, the foundation of the firm was we have to align the beautiful human, the interior, who they are, with their money. And that's the non-negotiable. I can I can tinker, I can shift, I can adjust anything. I can systematize things, update processes, use technology, but it has to be from that foundation. That is who we are as a firm. And so I would really suggest for, G2 is really to say, what is the cornerstone? What is the foundation of this firm? That is the non-negotiable. What does that look like? And then how do I make it more successful? And I will, every Generation Two person should be feeling a little stretched at times, some tests and things like that. And I remember Gail, I think it was 3 years into me being a Colman Knight. I'm about 6 years in now, so about halfway through, and she goes, "Knight, are you happy?" And I very candidly, I was like, my expectations going into were wildly different than the reality. I don't think there was any cognitive way at the time I could have known what I was stepping into. But I will say this too. If Colman Knight was perfect, and I stepped into a firm where there was nothing that I could bring to the table. There was no unique up-leveling and genius and things that I could touch. I don't know if it would be as satisfying. And so for Generation Two, it is such a balance between honoring what has come before you, making sure you are acknowledging that, but also you are there to leave your own mark. You are there to bring this firm into the next generation, and you are also not alone in that. And so, who should be the person, the team member helping you most in that? Well, the Generation One partner that's bringing you in, having those conversations are essential. So those are kind of the things I would suggest the Generation Two person in the mix really be looking out for.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to dig a little bit deeper, if you don't mind, into the concept that you suggested of really buying into the foundation of what the firm believes in. You didn't come in thinking, hey, I am going to like totally rip this apart. It's like, no, there's something really good here that can get better, because, every business can get better if you take the time to do it. So that's kind of the view you took. And I think that's important for the the next generation to understand is what what can you what do you find there, and what can you build on, as opposed to um, what can I kind of add in from the top or from the side. It's really building up what's already there.
So much of the relationship, it's so much on trust. And think about that as both ways. And for like generation two, if you're thinking about, oh, I want to take over or be the future of this, it's just almost common sense. I want to build that trust. And one way to build that trust is to truly see what generation one has built. Why were they successful? And the more that you are open to seeing that, then the more trust you will build, and then the more that generation one is probably willing to give you. It, as simple as it is in quotes of like to say, it is such a see and be seen relationship of you want to both see your other partner and what they have done and be seen by them for what you can do. And super easy to say, way more complicated to put into practice, but I think that should be the hope. That should be the underlying part that you can even continue looping back to in those conversations.
And I think that applies to the G1 and the G2, that see and be seen, because it's really easy, especially if it's a smaller practice. Maybe you're coming in and there's only, one senior advisor who's been doing it for 30 years, has a small staff, and is used to hiding away in his or her own office, and nobody's supposed to bother them. And so you're going to bother them because you want to be seen, but they in turn need to come out of that office to be seen by you too, because it is, after all, a team and a process. It's not, they aren't these parallel paths that never cross.
Yeah, I think one other thing that's been helpful for me as a generation two in this is acknowledging how vulnerable it is for a generation one to let someone else in. And for me, it was I'm the first other partner, aside from Gail and Rich from the beginning. 30 years of just them. All of a sudden, they're opening up their books to me. They're opening up how their philosophies and how and everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. And that is just such a gift. It is so vulnerable and real. And the fact that any person is even willing to consider that, I think the gravity of that and just the gratefulness that I can enter into it has been really helpful. And I think it's important to hold that as a generation too. I will say that, so I'm the youngest. I have an older sister, and Colman Knight was actually founded before either one of us. And sometimes Gail and Rich say, Colman Knight was our first child. It was the first thing that they brought into existence. And now there's this whole, circle of our youngest child is able to steward our first child, all of that. But I only say that terminology because it shows the level that a founding partner, a generation one, brings to the practice. It kind of is their baby. And it is really scary, vulnerable. So many emotions are caught up in transitioning that entity over. And so that hasn't been lost on me. And I think it's really important for any generation two person to know that if they're joining a firm, as well as maybe it gives a little bit of vocabulary that a generation one partner could even start to share and express to their generation two as well.
Yeah, I love it. And I think baked into that is that there's no recipe for how long it takes for the G1 and the G2 to gel. Sometimes it can happen quickly. I work with some more senior advisors who bring somebody onto their team and say, well, it's going to take them 6 years to get to the point that I would even, consider bringing them into partnership. And, a year and a half later, they're like, wow, they're knocking my socks off. I've got to advance the pace of doing this. And then other times it goes a little bit more slowly and a little bit more deliberately. We're both having phone problems today. Uh, but let's shift gears here because I want to go back and dig into buying into what really makes the firm, the thing that makes Colman Knight, and I think you call that integral wealth.
Yes.
So talk about that because I think that's what you had to understand and buy into as being, the the legacy, if you will, of that first child that your parents had in their business.
Yeah, beautiful. And you are spot on. That is what the firm is. So, and I would say it started from a idea. So both Gail and Rich were at Tucker Anthony in their financial planning division, and they saw very, very early on everyone's just talking about money, or even the standpoint of like, you live your life and here, we'll handle your money. Don't even think about your money. You just live your life separate, separate, separate. And Gail, the
Can I
visionary,
stop you there for a second? I
was,
want to stop you there for a second because I just have a great story that I want to share about that.
yeah,
When I was running an office for a financial planning firm, we had another firm down the street whose building was strategically located on a strip that this one very wealthy community, the people who lived there had a drive by, and their philosophy was, we put our office there because we want to be like a daycare. You can just come by and drop your money off here, and we'll take care of it for you. And they were separating the money from the people. And so, as you were sharing that, it just I hope that makes sense.
yeah, no, it definitely does. And I still think today there's so many firms out there that do it that way. And there's probably a lot of people out there who like service that way. So it's not that
Right.
it's wrong, but for our firm and for 36 years ago, that was the foundation. We have to integrate those two. The story that our money is separate from our lives, it's backwards. We have to actually, the better work we can do is by connecting those two. So that was just the foundational cornerstone. So I would not be at Colman Knight right now if I didn't buy into that. And the beauty of that is, and I say this a lot. So Gail and Rich spent 30 years mastering that human side of it, those connections, that like what happens in that client meeting. And I'm happy to, share anything about what those, meetings can look like, our process. But they spent 30 years doing that. What they didn't spend 30 years doing is marketing, operations, processes, and stuff like that, which super interesting. I would say the firms that are gathering assets or AUM based, they're great at that. They operationalize, they are great at marketing and those type of things. So I would say one of the gifts of me as a generation two coming in of seeing that is, whoa, the the actual product that we have, which is the human to human connection and how we do the work, is incredible. The back office, the operations, the marketing, the organization pieces, we're like technology, we're like 30 years, behind. We're 30 years ahead on how to be with a client and 30 years behind on how to structure things. And so my goal for the 5, 6 years that I've been here and will continue to be is, how do I get it to, it's not 30 years to take us to catch up on the organization, back office things, while keeping all the genius areas that we've developed over 30 years of expertise and knowledge, and infusing that into our technology.
Yeah. I think in a previous conversation, you mentioned that is kind of when I asked you, like, what's a challenge facing your business? It's the automation of those systems that are so integral, to use your word, for really getting to know a client and tie their money to their life and their lifestyle and the things that are most important to them.
Yeah, and things that I would say were a huge success. So we use kinder questions and life planning questions, and uh, Gail and Rich have been using that on and off for, mostly whenever. But one of the things um, that I did, it was more of a reactive place of like, oh, we know this will serve clients, but we'll kind of wait and see and let them request it. It's there. One thing that I said is, I think that serves everyone. And let's start any new client who comes on, the first conversations that we're having are that, because that was me seeing them, seeing their genius and what they bring, and then just saying, we just need a little structure and organization to say, this is just what we do, this is who we are, and right up front. So now in our marketing, in our prospecting, in what we show to a new potential client, they see, oh, the first thing I'm going to do before I even look at any of the numbers, I'm having a 2-hour conversation where it's just who I am, what are my values, and that's space. And I will say we have lost potential clients because of that, because they're like, why would I ever go there with, I actually had a probably I could probably count on my hands the amount of people who have done it, but I remember vividly this woman was, she's like, why would I ever tell my financial planner these things? And I said, you wouldn't, and that's okay. We are not for everyone. And that's part of actually what finding new clients is. We are on the same team of, are you a good fit for us? Are we a good fit for you? And we weren't a good fit for her. But it's some of those pieces of even what I could bring to the table of, oh, how we, the steps were there, the tools were already there. It's just systematizing and saying, it's now a non-negotiable for us in the way our firm operates. We need to do this. And that's been really, really serving for both our new clients, and might be surprising for some G1s out there to know, actually our old clients have loved it too. And the ability for the ones that either did it in the first place to revisit those questions. We now every 5 years revisit it anyways. And then for the people who never did it in the first place, we have had a couple say, why do I have to go through this? Don't you already know this about me? And the truth is, yes, we do know a lot of those things about them, but it's a gift to re-ground ourselves, to reevaluate it. And so a lot of the messaging can come through that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. You actually beat me to a question because I was going to ask you, how do existing clients who may not understand the language of your process because it was just something that was being done, um, uh, adopt or react to the fact that you're explaining to them that this is the process. This is the way that it works. And I'm sure some say, well, of course, that's kind of how I think about you, even though you may not have used those words. And others are like, huh, have we been haven't we been already doing that? So that but it net it's a positive when you take the time to improve the way that you deliver the message around your story, the way you serve your clients and are your best for them, and repeat it to them, because then they can remember that you're working with them with the real purpose and not just, to manage the money or to, put together a financial plan in a, 3-ring binder or a Dropbox folder. That there's this process here. There's a reason that we work with Colman Knight.
Yeah, and I'll say for any advisor out there, it can be super scary to, eh, um, in any way. All of a sudden, you learn a new planning technique around, Roth conversions or anything, and you're like, oh my God, I haven't been doing this for, that time. Or, oh my goodness, for these clients, I haven't been doing this interior discovery process. It can be so like intimidating, almost like, your tail tucked between your legs, like, um, I'm sorry, like, could we, do this? But the reality is, if you learn a new strategy, if you can support and help anyone in more ways, that's a gift. And just approaching it that way. And honestly, you can even do it with your chest out, with confidence, and saying, you know what, I have seen this really support other clients, and it would be a real gift if I could take you through this with me. So that way I can understand you more. And I'm actually really excited about the possibilities that this could bring if you engaged in this with me. And I think that is some of the messaging that we have done. And it's all just based in truth of any client that lets you into that deeper way of how they operate, how they think, what matters to them. I kind of claim that I'm just a mirror. I hear what people say and I just reflect it back at different times, appropriate times. But it is so important, that sharing to begin with. And so, again, if there's a way to communicate that, and if you'll notice just our philosophy, aligning ourselves on the same team. We're back on the same team. We're on the same side of the table. We're in this together. Hey, I have this idea that this could support you even more. Are you open to trying it? And it can be a really, if you frame it that way. I haven't had the experience of a client being like, that's, why would you ever do that? So I think the framing of it, and knowing in your confidence from within, knowing this is just a deeper way that we can support.
Yeah. So let me add to that, because I think that is a vital point. As I work with advisors, oftentimes one of the things that I am doing with them is helping them take this wealth of knowledge that they have in between their ears that is serving their clients well, and find a way to articulate it better so that they have what we call a signature solution that they can say, this is how we take our clients from point A to point B over the course of a relationship. And then I say, go out and share this with your existing clients, which is when you talked about maybe you get a little bit of that pucker factor coming on. But invariably, um, when they do that, what their clients are seeing, and we even include some language around this, is, hey, Knight is working to make his business better to serve me better. This isn't a process to make more money. This is a process to serve clients better. And that's why you stop and take the time to look at what you're doing, and stop and take the time to find new ways to describe it and introduce it and add to it, and then stop and take the time to share what you're doing and changing with the people for whom you are doing it, because it is all about the client. So, Knight, we're running towards the end of time. It's time to begin to land the plane. I just want to give you open mic. Spend just a couple of minutes sharing maybe a last thought that you want to pass on, based on the conversation that we have, as to how somebody listening to this podcast can take what we've been talking about and apply it to their business, no matter kind of which generation they're in, or what stage their business is in.
Yeah, beautiful. The I guess advice that I would have out there for just financial advisors in general is the magic happens through engagement with clients, and any way to engage deeper, engage more, I think is such a gift and a level of, support. And I think if you come from that approach, we are a partner in life, we are a co-pilot, we are a support on whatever realm, whether it's really deep practical strategies, or if it's there just to hear and understand, so that way we can align those practical strategies together. I think that is so serving. And the more, I love the allegory of the cave and like Socrates. And so like my experience, when you do financial planning this way, it's like seeing the sun. And it can feel really scary to do deep emotional, holistic, life planning. It can feel really intimidating, scary at first, and you might want to just run back and say, I just want to let me just be a money manager again. Like, let me just like align a portfolio. But when you actually start doing the work and you see the difference that you can have in a client's life, it is night and day. And it actually allows you to have a better product to sell in some ways. Of like, here's the crazy part of like, this is what our firm promises. If you, client, engage with us, you will live a more aligned, better life. You will be able to align your life with your money. That is a crazy thing to be able to promise someone, and it is so achievable if you have the client that is open to go there with you and you are willing to support them in that way. So I would say that is really what you know first 6 years in my financial planning career, that has really been the piece, the undercurrent, the sticking to of the engagement is a gift, and being able to be that co-pilot and nurture that openness and infinity sign of like moving back and forth between the practical elements and the interior. And we live right in that middle. We are the person that helps live right in that middle, that can connect it and be there with our clients. And so I would say anything that helps any advisor out there develop skill sets on either side, and do bring that into your meetings more and more, can catalyze your development significantly. I'm 6 years into my financial planning career, and I feel like I've in some ways had the experience of a 20-30 year career. Anyone who's had a 20-30 year career might roll their eyes at that, but genuinely, in bringing in those elements and practicing it and doing it, I think is such a catalyst to a younger generation. But it can still be so supportive to an older generation as well, to keep learning and bringing those elements in. So
Yeah.
if I had to, yeah,
I love that. I love that because, in a world where a lot of what people think financial planning is technology, that personal touch, that connection is just so important. And I think even more importantly, and I really want to compliment you on this, is the smile and the energy and the true belief that you have in who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think that is essential for building a successful life or practice, whether you're G1 or G2. Be excited, be happy for your clients, be curious, and really want to dig deep. And I think your career and your business and the things you're doing for your clients will go a long way. So I hate to do this, but I've got to cut it off here. We've gone a little long, but it has been an awesome conversation. Knight, thank you for joining us. To the audience, we'll see you next week. And remember, we're rooting for your success. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Purpose Focused Advisor. If you want to learn more, head over to our website, truestfancoaching.com. There you'll learn all about becoming a purpose-focused advisor. You'll also find today's show notes and links to the other gifts and resources we talked about during the episode. Again, thanks for listening, and remember, we're rooting for your success.